Respiration. Respiration involves gaseous exchange, intake of oxygen from the atmosphere and release of carbon dioxide, which is called as breathing. आता respiration म्हटल्यार बेसिक डेफिनेशन कितें तेजें तर इट इज द एक्सचेंज ऑफ गॅसीस ऑक्सिजन आनी कार्बन डायऑक्सायड. इफ यू कन्सिडर प्लांट्स जाल्यार प्लांट्स carbon dioxide घेता from the atmosphere and they undergo photosynthesis process and they release oxygen into the environment. And if you consider animals, animals कितें करतात तर oxygen घेता from the environment, they process that oxygen and carbon dioxide release करता into the environment. So this process of exchange of gases within the body of the organism and the environment is called as respirations. Specifically हेका म्हणटा breathing. Breakdown of simple food in order to release energy inside the cell is called as cellular respiration. Cellular respiration जे आसा it takes place at the cellular level, at the cell level. So जेन्ना within the cell food substances जेन्ना breakdown जाता in order to release energy, it is called as cellular respiration. Various activities of cell आसता, various metabolic activity of cell आसता त्यो कॅरी आउट करपाक सेलाक एनर्जी जाय आसता आनी ती एनर्जी खंयच्यान येता तर ती एनर्जी येता बाय ब्रेकडावन ऑफ फूड विच इज प्रेजेंट इन टू द सेल टू रिलीज द एनर्जी. हेका म्हणटा सेल्युलर रेस्पिरेशन. Breakdown of glucose by various pathways. Food, that is glucose, and breakdown of this glucose gives you energy. जेन्ना हो ग्लुकोज ब्रेकडावन जाता तेन्ना एनर्जी रिलीज जाता इन द फॉर्म ऑफ एटीपी, एडिनोसिन ट्रायफॉस्फेट. सो जेन्ना ग्लुकोज ब्रेकडावन जाता तेन्ना ही एटीपी रिलीज जाता, दॅट इज एनर्जी रिलीज जाता आनी देन दिस सेल कॅन यूज दिस एनर्जी फॉर वेरियस मेटाबॉलिक एक्टिविटीज. देर आर वेरियस pathways of breakdown of glucose. So ho glucose C6H12O6 in cytoplasm कितें जाता तर in cytoplasm हो जो glucose आसा it breaks down to give pyruvic acid आनी energy. In cytoplasm तो breakdown जाता to give pyruvic acid आनी energy. हो जो pyruvic acid आसा तो then based on the factors like whether in the presence of oxygen काय oxygen ना, oxygen कमी आसा, based on such environments हो pyruvic acidaचो various fates आसता. Based on presence or absence of oxygen हो pyruvic acid जो आसा पळय तेजो different fate आसता, तो different substances produce करता आनी different बाय products दिता. आता first आमी पळोवया in the absence of oxygen. In the absence of oxygen हो जो pyruvic acid आसा it gives you ethanol, carbon dioxide and energy. हे प्रोसेसाक म्हणटा fermentation which takes place in the absence of oxygen. Fermentation is the process of conversion of pyruvic acid into ethanol, carbon dioxide and energy by yeast. हो जो process आसा in the absence of oxygen जो pyruvic acidaचो conversion जो आसा to give ethanol हो आमी mostly use करता in various commercial industries, ethanol and various products related to this ethanol based. So हितून yeast use करता for this process जो convert करता pyruvic acid into ethanol in complete absence of oxygen. Also it gives you energy. Second, when there is insufficient oxygen asa but it is insufficient. This is mostly seen in case of muscles. Musclesan कितें जाता तर when there is insufficient oxygen, pyruvic acid जो आसा it is converted into lactic acid plus energy. Lactic acid. Accumulation of lactic acid causes muscle fatigue. It occurs after rigorous exercise. So in muscles कितें जाता तुम्ही मसल क्रॅम्स आयकला आसतले ऑर नमनस आयकला आसतले. हे कित्याक जाता तर इट इज ड्यू टू एक्युमुलेशन ऑफ लॅक्टिक एसीड. जेन्ना पळय ऑक्सिजन सारकें मेळना आमच्या मसलाक इन द पर्टिक्युलर पार्ट ऑफ अ मसल, तेन्ना this pyruvic acid has been converted to lactic acid, आणि हो accumulation of this lactic acid causes the numbness or the cramps or the muscle fatigue. आणि क्रॅम्स मोस्टली केन्ना डेवलप जाता जेन्ना तुमी विगरस एक्सरसाइज करता, नॉन स्टॉप विगरस एक्सरसाइज, आनी तेन्ना डिमांड ऑफ युअर बॉडी फॉर ऑक्सिजन इज जितको चड एक्सरसाइज करता तितको चड ऑक्सिजन जाय पडटलो तुमच्या बॉडीन, आनी देन यू वील एंड अप फॉर हॅविंग शॉर्ट ऑफ ऑक्सिजन टू युअर वेरियस बॉडी पार्ट्स. आनी तेन्ना तुमकां हो थर्ड प्रेझन्स ऑफ ऑक्सिजन. जेन्ना प्रेझन्स ऑफ ऑक्सिजन आसता, presence of oxygen, जेन्ना ऑक्सिजन in appropriate amount आसता, it is seen in case of mitochondria. So तेन्ना pyruvic acid जो आसा it is converted to carbon dioxide, water plus energy. So हे तेजे by products. जेन्ना in the presence of oxygen pyruvic acid is been broken down in the mitochondria. So these are various pathways by which you can break down to release energy. Respiration. Respiration is of two types, aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration. Aerobic respiration takes place in the presence of oxygen. So aerobic respiration जो आसा it takes place in the presence of oxygen, and anaerobic opposite to aerobic, that is it takes place in the absence of oxygen. जेन्ना oxygen ना आणि थंय जेन्ना respiration जाता it is called as anaerobic respiration. Aerobic respiration occurs in mitochondria. आम्ही पहिल्या स्लाइडीन पहिले की aerobic respiration जे आसा ते in mitochondria जाता in the presence of oxygen, आणि anaerobic respiration occurs in cytoplasm. Aerobic respirationाचो end product कोण तर कार्बन डायऑक्साइड आणि वॉटर, आणि end products of anaerobic respiration are alcohol or lactic acid. Aerobic respiration, more amount of energy is being released, whereas anaerobic respiration, less amount of energy is released. So overall आमकां कितें कळ्ळें from this, तर aerobic respiration occurs in presence of oxygen, it occurs in mitochondria, and end products are carbon dioxide and water, and it gives you or releases a large amount of energy. Anaerobic takes place in the absence of oxygen. Anaerobic म्हटल्यार in the absence of oxygen occurs in cytoplasm, end products are alcohol or lactic acid, and it gives you less amount of energy. This is the aerobic respiration wherein glycolysis takes place in the cytoplasm. हो पळय, glycolysis meaning breakdown of glucose to pyruvate, तेका म्हणटा glycolysis. Lysis meaning breakdown, glyco meaning glucose. So glycolysis of glucose to pyruvate. During this process also energy is being released in the form of ATP, adenosine triphosphate, ATP. मागीर हो जो pyruvate आसा it enters into mitochondria during aerobic respiration in the presence of oxygen. So in mitochondria हो जो pyruvate आसा तो enters into citric acid cycle. Citric acid cycle and खूबशी steps आसा which will be elaborated or studied in deep in later parts. So in citric acid cycle हे pyruvateचे convergence जाता, आणि here also the energy is being released. It also releases FADH2, NADH2. This FADH2 and NADH2 enters into oxidative phosphorylation, which is another cycle, आणि हांगाय बीन तुमकां ATP or energy मेळटली. This is aerobic respiration. Then comes anaerobic respiration, absence of oxygen. Anaerobic respiration जे आसा तितून सेम glycolysis चे जाता, ते जाता in the cytoplasm wherein glucose is been broken down into pyruvate. ATP release जाता same like in case of aerobic respiration. Then pyruvate जो आसा it goes in fermentation to produce lactate and ethanol, releasing carbon dioxide as a byproduct. So this is the comparison between aerobic and anaerobic respiration. So finally जो ATPs असता or energy आम्ही already म्हटलं की energy release in aerobic respiration is very much high in amount than in anaerobic respiration. So finally पळयतले कितें तर ATP production. More the ATP generation, more will be the energy. So in case of aerobic respiration, typical energy yield is 36 ATP. And if you see in case of anaerobic respiration, it is only 2 ATP. So तुम्ही आता हेतूंतल्यान पळोवपाक शकता की 36 ATPs खंय पडटा आनी 2 ATP खंय पडटा. Obviously without any doubt energy release will be very much higher in the aerobic respiration in the presence of oxygen. Then coming to human respiratory system. Human respiratory system is the passage of air through the respiratory system. Respiratory system म्हटल्यार all the organs and all the passages जे की associated आसा, जे की works together for exchange of gases through the entire body of the human. आता आम्ही पळोवया द ट्रान्सफर ऑर द पॅसेज ऑफ एअर थ्रू द रेस्पिरेटरी सिस्टम खंयचे खंयचे ऑर्गन्स आसा जे असोसिएटेड आसा आनी तेंची पॅसेज पळोवया. स्टार्टिंग विथ द नेझल कॅविटी. नेझल कॅविटी पयली नॉस्ट्रील आसता, नॉस्ट्रिल्सचे एक्सटर्नल ओपनिंग आसता. नाक जे आमचे आसा, नाक, नॉस्ट्रिल्स. So it comes first before the nasal cavity. So it starts with the nostril. Nostril leads to nasal cavity through a passage called nasal passage. हांगा एक passage like आसता which connects the nostril to the nasal cavity. तेका म्हणटा nasal passage आणि then nasal cavity. Nasal cavity open जाता into pharynx. Pharynx जे आसता it is common opening for both windpipe and the food pipe. Then larynx opens to trachea. Trachea divides to form two branches called as bronchi. Bronchi opens up into lungs. Bronchi further divides to form bronchioles. Bronchioles further divides to form alveoli, which are sac-like structure, small tube-like structure, and then diaphragm. हो diaphragm जो आसा तो contract आणि relax जाता during inhalation and exhalation. So this is the overall passage through which the air moves from the external environment into the body of the humans. So first nostril जे की external opening onto the surface of the body. मागीर nasal passage ही passage. Then nasal cavity. Then comes pharynx. वो pharynx जो आसता it is common opening for both food pipe आणि wind pipe. So हेजे division जाता, एक part open जाता into esophagus आणि दुसरो part open जाता into larynx or wind pipe. आमची व्हडली बीन आमकां सांगता पळय की जेवतना और कितें खातना उलोव नाका, ओगी रावात. जेवतना और कितें खातना you should not talk. तर हें कित्याक? Because pharynx जो आसा it has got two opening आणि तो एक common point for windpipe आणि for food pipe. So जेन्ना आमी breathe करता, जेन्ना breathing चालू आसता तेन्ना आमचो जो larynx आसा हो तो ओपन जाता. आमची wind pipe ओपन जाता आणि आमी जेन्ना खाता कितें swallow करता तेन्ना आमचो esophagus ओपन जाता. सो समज आमी कितें खाता आणि खाता खाता समज आमी उलयता अशें जावपाक शकता की आमचें जें फूड आसा तें फूड पायप सोडून आमचें विंड पायपान एंटर जावपाक शकता आणि मागीर खूब कॉम्प्लिकेशन्स जावपाक शकता. सो बिकॉज ऑफ दॅट वायल हॅविंग फूड यू शूड नेवर टॉक. pharynx जे आसा तें देन opens into larynx. Larynx commonly known as the voice box. Larynx voice box कित्याक म्हणटा तर ते sound produce करता. And also हे जे larynx आसा it protects the entry of food into this windpipe. कशें तर हे जे larynx आसा तेजे वयर जो कार्टिलेजिनस बोन वो फूल जो larynx आसा इट इज अ कार्टिलेजिनस बोन आणि तेका हांगा वयर जो ओपनिंग तेका म्हणटा ग्लॉटिस आणि हे ग्लॉटिस जे आसा तेका एक फ्लॅप कार्टिलेजिनस फ्लॅप लायक स्ट्रक्चर आसता धाकण कशें आसता धापपाक which is called as epiglottis. आणि हे जे धाकण जे असता or cap जे असता it opens only during breathing process. एक्झिलेशन एंड इन्स्पिरेशन जेन्ना जाता तेन्नाच. जेन्ना आमी कितें स्वेलो बीन करता तेन्ना तें बंद आसता कित्याक तर टू प्रिवेंट द एंट्री ऑफ फूड इनटू द विंड पायप. So this is the larynx, which is called as voice box, which produces sound. Larynx also, it then opens into trachea. Trachea again cartilaginous structure which bears the rings. Trachea divides into two branch-like structure which is called as bronchi. Ho bronchi जो आसा, each bronchi goes into each lung. Into the lung, ho जो bronchi asa, it further divides to form many branches which are now called as bronchioles. हे further branches सांग म्हणटा bronchioles. Bronchiole further divides जाता to form small round sphere-like structures, sac-like structures which are called as alveoli. And then this alveoli are been associated with the blood capillaries. Blood capillaries कित्याक तर in alveoli exchange of gases takes place जे की capillaries associated असता. आता ह्यो blood capillaries जे आसा from our different body parts deoxygenated जे blood आसा ऑक्सिजन कंज्यूम करून जे कार्बन डायऑक्साइड आशिल्ले blood जे आसा deoxygenated blood ते from the different parts of our body ते through transport system लंग्सान हाडटा आणि लंग्सान हाडून फर्स्ट खंय दिता तर दिस alveoli आणि हांगा एक्सचेंज ऑकर्स आणि ते डिऑक्सिजनेटेड ब्लड घेता ऑक्सिजनेटेड ब्लड दिता आणि जो डिऑक्सिजनेटेड ब्लडांतल्यान तो कार्बन डायऑक्साइड करता तो परत थ्रू दिस नेझल कॅविटी इनटू द एनवायरमेंट तो एक्सेल आउट करता आणि जो ऑक्सिजन घेता तो परत ड्युरिंग एक्सचेंज ऑक्सिजन ते ब्लडाक दिता ह्या ब्लड कॅपिलरीजांक दिता आणि त्यो ब्लड कॅपिलरीज मागीर अगेन डिफरंट पार्ट्सांक हो ऑक्सिजनेटेड ब्लड पावयता.
Mechanism of breathing. We have learned की breathing म्हटल्यार कितें तर it is the exchange of gases. Exchange of gases, carbon dioxide and oxygen between the environment and the organisms. There are two phases in breathing. First is inhalation and second is exhalation. Inhalation म्हटल्यार कितें तर श्वास भितर घेवप इनहेल करप एक्सटर्नल एअर इनटू लंग्स घेवप इनहेल करप. एक्झलेशन म्हटल्यार फ्रॉम द नेम इटसेल्फ आमकां कळटा की एक्झेल आउट करप दॅट इज एअर एक्झेल करप भायर ओडवप श्वास भायर घालप. इनहेलेशन ड्युरिंग इनहेलेशन द thoracic cavity that is chest cavity expands. Thoracic cavity म्हटल्यार the cavity wherein आमचे lungs present असता, lungs, heart all are present in the thoracic cavity, the chest cavity. So during inhalation जेन्ना आमी श्वास भितर घेता तेन्ना आमची chest cavity or thoracic cavity expand जाता. Second, ribs lift up. Ribs म्हटल्यार rib cage which is surrounding our thoracic cavity which protects our heart, our lungs. So the rib cage. So during inhalation ribs lift up. It's a common sense. Obviously जेन्ना तुम्ही श्वास भितर घेतली तुमचे chest expand जातले so as your ribs will lift up. Third, diaphragms become flat in shape. Diaphragm जो आसा it is a cartilaginous bone which separates your thoracic cavity from abdomen and also ही जी आमची upper thoracic cavity आसा तेका हो diaphragm support करता. एक base also provide करता for your thoracic organs. Diaphragm जो आसा तेजी actual shape dome shaped असता. But जेन्ना तुम्ही inhale करता श्वास जेन्ना भितर घेता तेन्ना since this thoracic cavity expands हो diaphragm जो आसा it changes its shape into flat. Complete flat जाता तो आणि तो dome shaped उरना during inhalation. Fourth, volume of lungs increases and air enters the lungs. हो जो लंग्साचो वॉल्यूम जो आसा ड्युरिंग इनहेलेशन तो इनक्रीज जाता आणि then the air enters the lungs. Since volume of lungs increase thoracic cavity expand जावप म्हटल्यार कितें की lungs expand जाता. लंग्स एक्सपांड जावप म्हटल्यार वॉल्यूम ऑफ लंग्स इनक्रीजीस म्हटल्यार चडांत चड एअर तो एकोमोडेट करपाक शकता इनटू लंग्स. सिन्स volume of lungs increases, the air enters inside the lungs. Then exhalation. In exhalation, thoracic cavity contracts. Exhalation म्हटल्यार श्वास सोडप, श्वास भायर सोडप आणि जेन्ना श्वास सोडटा तेन्ना जो thoracic cavity जी आसा ती contract जाता. Ribs move downwards, diaphragm becomes dome shaped. Ribs ज्यो आसा ज्यो पयली expand जाल्यो during inhalation आता त्यो परत back to normal shape वयता, त्यो परत downward move जाता. Diaphragm जो flat जालो तो again during exhalation परत dome shaped परत येता. Volume of lungs decreases and air exits from the lungs. So during exhalation volume जो आसा लंग्साचो तो परत decrease जाता आणि since volume of lungs decreases, air जो आशिल्लो भितर in lungs it is forced out to exhale out. Air लंग्सांतल्यान भायर move जाता. Here, these are the diagrams showing both inspiration and exhalation. So during inspiration, that is जेन्ना श्वास भितर घेता तेन्ना हो जो diaphragm आसा it becomes flat. कित्याक तर there is expansion of thoracic cavity. ही thoracic cavity expand जाता, expand out जाता, ribs lift जाता, chest cavity expand जाता आणि diaphragm जो आसा it forms flat shape. आणि then लंग्साचो वॉल्यूम इनक्रीज जाता आणि एअर मूव्स इनसाइड. ऑन दी अदर हँड ड्युरिंग एक्झेलेशन हो जो डायफ्राम आशिल्लो इट गेट्स बॅक टू दी डोम शेप्ड. रिब्स परत डाउनवर्ड्स येता, thoracic cavity contract जाता, volume of lung decreases आणि this causes air to move out of the lungs. Exhalation जाता. Exchange of gases between alveolus, blood and tissues. आता कशें हे exchange जाता, कशें deoxygenated blood is again made to oxygenated blood. So हो exchange in lungs alveolus कडेन कसो जाता. तर first step, in lungs हे जे alveolus आसा they are filled with oxygen. They are rich in oxygen. So हो air जो आसा it goes into the blood. कसो वयता ब्लडान तर थ्रू दिस ब्लड कॅपिलरीज. ह्यो ज्यो ब्लड कॅपिलरीज आसा असोसिएटेड विथ दिस अल्व्हिओलस हांगा एक्सचेंज ऑफ गॅसेस टेक्स प्लेस. हो जो ऑक्सिजन आसा हियर इन अल्व्हिओलस इट मूव्स इनटू द ब्लड थ्रू दिस ब्लड कॅपिलरीज. देन ऑक्सिजन बाइंड्स विथ हिमोग्लोबिन इन आरबीसीज. हिमोग्लोबिन जे आसा दी आरबीसीज जे आसा रेड ब्लड सेल्स जे आसा इन द ब्लड इन दिस ब्लड वेसल्स तेका हो ऑक्सिजन बाइंड करता आणि नाव इट फॉर्म्स दी ऑक्सिजनेटेड ब्लड, प्युअर ऑक्सिजनेटेड ब्लड. देन दिस ऑक्सिजन इज रिलीज्ड इन टिश्यू. सो ही आरबीसीज और हे ऑक्सिजनेटेड ब्लड जे आसा इट इज बीन ट्रान्सफर्ड टू डिफरंट पार्ट्स ऑफ द बॉडी बाय द ब्लड सिस्टम आणि ओवर देर अगेन पर्टिक्युलर पार्टान जेन्ना ते पावता दिस ऑक्सिजन इज बीन रिलीज्ड बाय दिस आरबीसी इन दॅट tissue and carbon dioxide थंयचे ते घेता. Second, carbon dioxide from tissue. So once oxygen दिले into the tissue, the waste product, the carbon dioxide which is being produced in that tissue is being taken up by the blood capillaries in the exchange of oxygen. म्हटल्यार जेन्ना ह्यो ब्लड कॅपिलरीज प्युअर ऑक्सिजनेटेड ब्लड जेन्ना एक टिश्यू कडेन पावयता आणि ऑक्सिजन रिलीज करता ते टिश्यू तेजो जो वेस्ट प्रोडक्ट जो आसा दॅट इज इन द फॉर्म ऑफ कार्बन डायऑक्सायड तो ती घेता इन दी एक्सचेंज ऑफ ऑक्सिजन विथ दॅट टिश्यू. आफ्टर दॅट हो जो कार्बन डायऑक्सायड फ्रॉम टिश्यूज ब्लड वेसलान घेतला इट इज देन डिझॉल्व्ड इन दॅट ब्लड. तो त्या ब्लडान डिझॉल्व जाता आणि दॅट ब्लड वेसल्स अगेन इन दी अल्व्हिओलस एक्सचेंज करता. Then that blood vessels the carbon dioxide in the alveolus hatta and over here that carbon dioxide is being released into the alveolus and then ho carbon dioxide through trachea and then ho carbon dioxide through alveolus through bronchi, bronchioles, bronchi, trachea हे सगळ्यातल्यान मागीर तो lastly through nostril बॉडीतल्यान भायर वयता which is breathing out. आता टेरेस्ट्रियल ऑर्गॅनिझम जी ऑर्गॅनिझम्स जमनीर असता They use atmospheric oxygen for respiration. जे वाऱ्यान आसा atmospheric oxygen ती ते यूज करता for respiration. What about aquatic organism? Organisms जी उदकान रावता. They use dissolved oxygen for respiration. तेंका free air आसना थंय उदकान. So उदकान जे oxygen dissolved जाल्ले आसा, dissolved oxygen they use that for respiration. Then coming to respiration in plants. Plants we been respire करता, but their respiration is totally different and also simpler from the animal respiration. Tenka specific respiratory system asana to carry out respiration. Respiration in plants is simpler than the respiration in animals. Gaseous exchange occurs through. There are different ways by which plants respire. First is stomata in leaves. आम्ही पहिलीत पहिला की there are stomatas in leaves for gaseous exchange. Stomata म्हटल्यार small pores चे leafsaचेर असता which carry out gaseous exchange. Second is lenticels in stems. Lenticels म्हटल्यार same pores like structures असता on stems of the tree or plant. Pores like जितूंतल्यान gaseous exchange carry out जाता. And third, general surface of the roots. Roots also play a very important role in the gaseous exchange.